What's up, St. Louis? Jamal Mayers here. Want a chance to watch the Blues like an insider with me? When you become an annual STL Sports Central insider, you're automatically entered to win. We're picking 2 winners, each bringing a guest to join me in the Blues Alumni Suite for the game versus the Edmonton Oilers on Friday, March 13th. That's right, Connor McDavid. We'll have free drinks, heavy appetizers, and an unforgettable night of Blues hockey. Sign up now at STL Sports Central, and I'll see you at the game.
Baseball rebuilds are a lot like dentistry. They're not an exact science. Sure, you know how to keep clean, you know how to maintain, but they're not exact. There's some aesthetic choices you have to make. And in the case of Brendan Donovan and the St. Louis Cardinals, Donovan is like a first molar. He is grinding, he's doing things the right way, he's versatile, he's a valuable piece. The question becomes, are you doing a root canal or a deep cleaning? Your president of baseball ops, Chaim Bloom, are you pulling teeth or restoration work? You pulled Nolan Arenado, Sonny Gray, Wilson Contreras. The question becomes, what to do with the curious case of Brendan Donovan. It's February 1st. It's Card Central 365. Ethan Hannaford. We know what Brendan Donovan is. It's 15 to 20% better than the league average hitter, all-star potential, gold glove potential. What are the potential pitfalls of going into spring training in the 2026 season with utility man Brendan Donovan in the lineup?
First off, I had to give a round of applause for that open because it was just so beautiful. Well done, as always. You are a king, Luke Slaybaugh. Brendan Donovan, who he is, pros and cons of moving on from him. I think we can all speak that we know the pros to moving on at this point from Brendan Donovan. You are going to be able to maximize on his return right now. You would think right now more than at any other point. But if the Cardinals are to keep him, it is because they did not get the return that they expected, that a guy like him, who can play multiple spots on the infield, can hit well against both right-handed and left-handed pitching, can hit for average, but also can slug at times as well. There's a lot of pros to Brendan Donovan. I didn't even mention the Hall of Fame level hair. The cons to not being able to trade Brendan Donovan, and there's a kind of a few ways that you have to process this. The closer that we get to this, I don't think we're quite at having this conversation yet. Are we disappointed that Donnie got moved or not? Because one, we don't know if he's going to get moved. We haven't gotten to the end of the offseason yet, and we've seen even in recent years things happen in spring training. But if the Cardinals aren't to move Brendan Donovan, it's hard to really know whether or not you should be disappointed if it's on Chaim Bloom or not, because we don't really know what kind of interest he's gauging right now. We know that there are several teams that have interest in him, but we don't know what kind of return package teams are offering up right now. The San Francisco Giants just signed Luis Ariz to a 1-year, $12 million deal. They were mentioned to be one of the big players in on Brendan Donovan, so that pretty much takes them out of the options. It really seems like right now it comes down to, are the Seattle Mariners willing to give Chaim Bloom and the Cardinals what they view Brendan Donovan for? If they don't move Brendan Donovan, I mean, I'll say this: it certainly isn't going to hurt their 2026 roster to have a guy of his caliber on the team. What could it potentially hurt? Could potentially hurt his trade value. Certainly, the more time that he's on the Cardinals is the less, a smaller length of control that another team is going to have on him. If they keep him for the start of the 2026 season, likely, not 100%, but likely, he's a Cardinal until the trade deadline, which means now you are selling him to another team. You are trying to sell him to another team rather than having 2 years of control. You have a year and a half of control. Still going to get pretty good value probably in return. There is a world in which teams are just as or maybe even more desperate and willing to give more at the trade deadline, knowing there's a year and a half of control compared to at the beginning of the year where there's 2 years of control, because I think that teams tend to be a little bit more desperate and willing to give a little more at the trade deadline. But you are running the risk of, are you at are the cards that you're holding, are they, in your opinion, are they better than what the other side thinks that they are? Are you eventually going to fool them into believing that the cards are as good as you're saying that they are? If Brendan Donovan continues to get better, then maybe he is able to still get a really good return. But if you're obviously taking the risk, if you don't take that best offer now, potentially, like I said, we don't know what it is, so it's hard to say that necessarily right now. But it certainly is interesting to see how exactly the Cardinals could go about this, for a multitude of reasons. But in trying to find this best deal, there certainly is an argument to be said that the Cardinals should just take it now. But if Chaim Bloom doesn't like the return options that he's getting, I also understand why he'd want to potentially hold out and see if he can get a better return package at the trade deadline when more teams are potentially going to be more desperate.
Desperation and leverage is always huge when the trade deadline comes. And again, this is a situation where you don't have to trade him. He's arbitration eligible next season. The reported salary of $5.8 million this year is very team friendly for someone who can hit at his contact rate and get on base at his rate. The question then becomes of timeline mismatch. And Bill Downton commenting here live on YouTube. Appreciate you all tuning in here on this Sunday morning. When the Cardinals are ready to compete again, Donovan is going to be 32. Brendan Donovan just turned 29 in January, so we're looking at January 2029. That is to be determined. And a question that I will ask you in the second block is, the root canal versus deep cleaning analogy is just how quickly can you turn this around and retool your roster? The Cardinals certainly approached the last couple months tearing this thing down to the studs. Wilson Contreras had been vocal about wanting to stay in St. Louis and then flipped on a dime. Everyone said the right things. Save for Nolan Arenado saying that it was probably going to be his last time around, or things were winding down for him. Gary Ware gives another perspective that Brendan Donovan needs to stay a Cardinal. And that would be another point I would bring up and pose to you. This concept of the Cardinal way and George Kissel. When you rebuild a team, think like the Astros, the start of the 2010s, you are walking into the dark with no roadmap. You run the risk of losing your identity. And with Brendan Donovan, 4-year veteran, you know what you're getting in terms of tenacity, the versatility, can play anywhere except for center field or catcher. So if Donovan is the molar, he is not blocking any wisdom teeth from coming in. He does not T-bone JJ Weatherholt on his path to the major leagues, or any other prospect at the position player level that the Cardinals would want to get reps in 2026 and beyond. So you know what you're getting with him. How would you navigate Brendan Donovan's role in 2026?
If he were to stay here, you're saying?
Yes.
If Brendan Donovan were to stay, how would I navigate his role? It's a very good question. Because you look at Brendan Donovan, you obviously know what you have in him, and if he is here, he's going to play every day. That's the caliber of player that he is. Whether you are looking to trade him or extend him, you have JJ Weatherholt and Nolan Gorman that are expected to be splitting second and third base wherever they decide to put them. You have Brendan Donovan, who has shown the ability to play left field and play it relatively well, although he did not play it really at all in 2025. You wonder if they are trying to move him away from that position, or if that was something specific to some of the injury woes that he was dealing with with his toe and his foot last year. So maybe, if Brendan Donovan is to stay and we see him playing left field early in spring training, maybe then we have a little bit of a better idea as to how they view Donnie and his ability to be versatile defensively. But if they don't, then we're going to have an interesting conversation about, okay, if Brendan Donovan is set up to be your second baseman, then what do you do with JJ Weatherholt? What do you do with Nolan Gorman? How do you split those two? Yes, they have the designated hitter spot, but there's not a guarantee that Ivan Herrera is going to be catching every day either. So this, once again, has the potential to get a little bit tricky for you. And you could, I would hate for Chaim Bloom and the Cardinals to say, shoot, we didn't trade enough players. We still have too much logjam. One of these guys needed to go. And the reason that that is a thing, also, and this is, this could potentially happen even if Brendan Donovan plays left field, because eventually Lars Nootbaar is going to be healthy. Now, because of his heel surgeries that he had this past offseason, it made it very difficult, I imagine, to trade him and to get any sort of return interest that you felt was worthy of the quality of player that Lars Nootbaar is. Because of that, he's still a Cardinal and is, in my opinion, expected to still be a Cardinal. With that being said, like I said, he's going to be back at some point. Then, regardless of if Brendan Donovan is playing in left field, you're going to have someone else that is fighting for time out there. So all of a sudden, you're kind of back to, it's a little bit different, but it's also kind of the same thing. You're back to trying to figure out this logjam and who's going to play where. Here's the deal. If JJ Weatherholt is here, which most people expect that he will be, you just threw that comment up a second ago about there needs to be a roster spot for JJ. I agree. JJ Weatherholt needs to play every day or close to it. He needs to play 5 days a week in this lineup. He needs to be on the field as much as possible. He almost automatically gets priority over these other guys that you have. That's how important his development is. But around that, that Donovan's going to play. So all of a sudden, what are you doing with Nolan Gorman? I think they probably view Nootbaar still relatively high. It's going to be interesting to see how exactly they navigate it if they don't trade anyone else. If Brendan Donovan is here, eventually there's going to be probably some sort of logjam, and that's a spot that you don't really want to be in. Hopefully they can turn that into good competition, but that is not a place that I would want for this Cardinals team to be in 2026.
Interesting. Running gag on the show is that Chaim Bloom listens to us because most everything that we have projected or said has come to be. We vouched for Brandon Clark in a prospect trade. We said back in October this offseason demands bold, decisive action.
Arenado to the Diamondbacks.
That was all you. That was all you. So these are all good things. And so it's interesting that even after the bold, decisive action that has occurred, and trading off some of your most talented and costly veterans, here we are again talking about a glut in the infield. Speaking of gluts, I can hear myself in the mix. Crazy. Super Bowl 60. We can say that because DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 60, and it puts you right in the center of the biggest game of the year. Some just have to call it the big game, but we can say the Super Bowl. And anything can happen during the Super Bowl. DraftKings has your back with early exit. If a player goes down in the first half, you still get paid out in cash immediately once your bet settles. No bonus bets, no waiting. Ethan Hannaford, looking at the line this morning, Seahawks 4.5, 5 points. What do you make of it?
I dig it. I'm slamming it. Seahawks, I like the battle testing that they have been through this year. I'm rolling with Seattle.
Rolling with Seattle. It was interesting. I had a conversation with some buddies last night, devolved into one of the Cowboys fans in our group saying that Dak Prescott was a top 6 quarterback in the league. But I did get my piece saying that Seattle was the side. And that's what I'm saying here when we're talking about DraftKings Sportsbook. Great night last night. If you're new to DraftKings, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code STL Sports. That's code STLSPORTS to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus, physically present in Missouri. Eligibility and restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets, which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer.
Is that Schaefer?
Yeah, it is. It sure is. That guy just
Big
does
Joe
everything
probably
around
heard
here,
me
doesn't
using
he?
him too many times. Okay. The case to extend or not extend Brendan Donovan. There are two camps in the comment section. One says unload, get prospect value in 2026. The others liken him to the bridge between rebuilding and contending. 29 years old, Donovan is in his prime years. The question for you, Ethan Hannaford, on the spot, off the cuff, when do you expect the Cardinals to compete for a World Series again?
There is a difference between competing and competing for a World Series. I think that 2028 could be a year where we see them starting to get back in the mix. We're talking about them being a player for the division. Kind of like we've talked about them the past several years in the mediocrity of John Mozeliak's tenure, right? Where it felt like they were good enough to be in the mix for a wild card, a division title in the Central, which has been weaker overall the last several years. But you didn't feel like they were a legitimate player for a World Series. I think that we could see the Cardinals get back to that point as they continue this uphill climb in 2028. I think that it also depends a lot on who you are bringing in and acquiring outside of just who are you developing. But you're also going to see guys like, Rainiel Rodriguez and some of these other young, talented guys that you have, Liam Doyle. Doyle is going to, has a chance to be here, I guess, by this year. But if he's not, there's a world in which we don't play baseball in 2027. You look at a guy like Liam Doyle, he could be ready to go by the start of 2028, even if they hadn't played baseball in 2027. So you have the potential of having some of these prospects that we're talking about right now about, oh man, if they could eventually get these guys going and turn them into real stars, you have the chance to have those guys on this roster 2028, 2029, plus whatever they're willing to bring in via free agency, which they will have to obviously eventually add to the payroll, which I have zero worry about them being willing to do. So I think that World Series contender-wise, you're probably looking more at 2029, 2030, if I had to imagine, where you're, and that's not a guarantee. That is if they play their cards right, then you could potentially eventually be looking at a team that could be a player for it in, I would say, 2029, 2030.
In that timeline, 2029, 2030, excuse me, long night. Brendan Donovan projects to be 32, 33 years old, still in his late prime and likely productive years, assuming that injuries don't befall him and everything goes according to plan. He continues his trajectory and is the known commodity that he is. High contact, good on base skills, versatile guy, playing very hard. You run the risk of injuries and certain pitfalls along the way. But timeline is such an important factor when it comes to making him fit in this roster. Think about some comparable extensions. Players who profile as either super utility or, upside with the bat can play multiple positions. Think of former Cardinal Tommy Edman and the contract he got in LA. Could have been considered an overpay of the 5 year, $74 million with the signing bonus and multiple millions deferred in that deal. Jeff McNeil for 4 years and $50 million. In the context of the Cardinals' payroll in several years, that does not seem like a bad deal at all. You're paying Dustin May $12.5 million as a risky, 1 year pitcher. $15 million for an average annual value for Brendan Donovan almost seems like it could be framed as a good benchmark. for deals on this team. Would he take it is a completely different conversation. But I feel like when it comes to position players, a lot of extensions are framed as either team friendly or an albatross. You have an everyday player. Rarely is it evaluated as, oh, he was fine. Case of someone like Tommy Edman has not been productive during the course of his extension, has hit for a little bit more home runs. I wouldn't say the power numbers are great in terms of slugging, but that's one where the team wins, so you forget about it. For Brendan Donovan, sliding into a contending team at that clip, it almost feels like it could be considered a good turning point for the Cardinals, no?
The problem that I have with potentially extending him is the style of player that he is, and how long can you successfully, or how long can he remain at this level of his game? Not to say that he's going to teeter off necessarily in the next year or two, but I would be really surprised if the Cardinals are willing to give that big of an extension with the amount of uncertainty that we have in 2027. And maybe the chat can help me out with this. I don't know off the top of my head. If Brendan Donovan signs a 5-year deal and they don't play in 2027, is 2027 considered a year off of that contract, or is that just pushed back? I don't know. If it is pushed back, then that deal goes a year later than you originally expected. If it doesn't, then you just lost an entire year of it. So I would argue either way, there's cons to it. I would be really surprised if we see with the and Charlie commenting saying no, he's paid. If that's true, if Brendan Donovan gets paid, then I don't expect that. Then they're just losing out on a year of that contract. I would be really surprised if the way that in which the Cardinals are spending right now, if they are going to be willing to extend someone prior to the pending lockout that it feels like is becoming inevitable at this point to see. So, is there pros to extending a guy like Brendan Donovan and having him for this in-between period? Yeah, there certainly is. It's the question of, do you feel as though, and this is only a question that very few can answer, the DeWitts, Chaim Bloom, and some of your upper front office management, is the return offers that you're getting better than the potential to extend him? Because we're not going to see him just walk in free agency. That's not going to happen. That would be an absolute disaster. I think we can all agree it's going to be one or the other. And yeah, we don't know. We don't know right now what those return offers look like. So it's hard exactly to say. I will say this. You mentioned earlier that one of the cons to him potentially leaving, talking about the Cardinal way, and would you be losing out on, or would you be running the risk of losing out on the Cardinal way? Here's why I would say no to that. I would say I'm not concerned about that because you do have a room full of guys that have been able to experience what that still is like, including Alec Burleson, Mason Wynn. They've talked about both of those guys stepping up and being leaders in the clubhouse. You have Matthew Liberatore, you have Jordan Walker, Nolan. You have guys that have been around and have seen what the expectation is for that clubhouse, not to mention a manager that has been in this organization for 20 years and knows that he's probably going to have to step in this year a little bit more than he normally would have to until some of these players take those leadership roles of their own. I would be very surprised if Ollie Marmol and some of these players that have been here already for a few years, I'd be very surprised if they allow for the Cardinal way to just die off, because I think they understand the importance of it.
It is important, and for Cardinals fans, these conversations are tough. You have not seen the organization tear its roster down to the stud since the mid-90s. So generations of Cardinals fans don't really know what this is like. It is unknown territory. It is not an exact science. Final thoughts, Ethan Hanford, as we wrap it up here on this Sunday, February the 1st.
I'm still processing whether or not Brendan Donovan it would be a failure if they weren't able to trade him. Like I said, because we don't know what the return package right now from, I'll just say, the Seattle Mariners is, because that seems like the obvious team that is left in the sweepstakes. We don't know what it is, so it's hard to say. Heimblum failed. Heimblum succeeded. We've seen him make 3, in my opinion, really solid moves to start off the offseason. So I am most certainly willing to trust that he is working in best interest of the team and being able to maximize his return. You're playing, you're maybe taking a little bit of a gamble if he struggles in the start of 2026, then maybe you're getting even worse offers than you did in this offseason. So let's hope that if they do end up holding on to him, that the gamble pays off and that Heimblum is able to make the right decision, and the Cardinals are still able to. This decision is able to move this rebuild in an even better direction.
Better direction coming soon. 9 days until pitchers and catchers report for spring training. He's Ethan Hannaford. I'm Luke Slabaugh. This has been Cards Central 365 here on Sunday, February the 1st. Always brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Have a great Sunday.